because I have your
I
side
know.
in mind.
Yeah. Yes. Sure. I'll speak to Susie and I'll figure out what she did and then we'll work from there.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
just coordinate. Still coordinate. We'll coordinate.
Okay, great. No
Hi,
problem.
everybody good? Thank you.
What?
See everybody. Everybody's good?
Susie, you know, they've got their own
Not
mountain birdies.
Moshava.
Don't ask them questions.
Moshe,
They've got a whole-
oh, you have your own camp.
There's a beautiful lodge here, and it's 5 minutes from Snow Valley. We went skiing today in Snow Valley, which is not far from Running Springs. You don't have to go all the way to Snow Summit.
I didn't know that.
And the accommodations here are very, very nice. I would highly recommend for your big families, if you want to come up as a big family, they have 5 or 6 big bedrooms. I mean, it's just beautiful. Okay. So I'm gonna go, I don't know where we left Fagi. We're gonna go back to we're in Perek Chaf, Pasuk Mem Gimel. The Bnei Yisrael, this summarize, Bnei Yisrael gathered 400,000 soldiers against Shevet Binyamin. Initially, on the first day, the Jewish people the Klal Yisrael lost 18,000, and the next day they lost 22,000. So 40,000, the Shevet Binyamin were able to kill from Klal Yisrael 40,000 people. Finally, last week, they set a trap. They drew the Binyamites out of the city of Giva, and then they actually didn't. The pasuk Mem Gimel is very important. Kitru et Binyamin hirdifuhu. Rashi says he kifu et Binyamin kiketer amakif et arosh. They completely encircled Shevet Binyamin. Now, and they didn't give them an opportunity to escape. Does anybody have a problem with that? We're going to learn later on tonight a famous Rambam that when the Jewish people attack, whoever they attack, they always have to leave the fourth. They can surround them on 3 sides, but they got to leave the 4th side open to allow them to escape. We learn that from even the battle against Midian by Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to see a proof for that soon, that they left them a way out. And here in the civil war against Binyamin, they did not offer them that. And therefore, by Yiplumi Binyamin Shmonasar Elef Ish at Kol Eila Anshe Chayil. They lost right there. We're going to see where else they lost. 18,000. Remember, Binyamin started off with 26,000. Vayifnu vayanusa midbar sela rimon. A group was able to run away to the midbar to a place called Sela Rimon. In the way there, vaya'olalu bamsilot chameshet alafim ish. They wiped out another 5,000. So now you're up to 23,000. 18 plus 5, 23,000. Vayadbiku achrav ad gidom vayakumi menu al payim ish. Another 2,000. So now you got 25,000. Vayi kol hanoflim binyamin esrim v'chamisha elef ish sholef cherev bayom ahud kol eila anshe chayil. 25,000 of the Binyamites were killed on that day.
Would this be considered a Milchemes Reshus or Milchemes Mitzvah?
I would say it was neither. The Milchemes Mitzvah was the Milchama against the Shiva, the 7 nations. And then, in the time of David, he went out on some Milchamos Reshuyos where he conquered Aram, Tzova, and Surya, but there was not also Milchemes Mitzvah. If they were given a command by Hashem to the Urim V'Tumim, etc., here they asked advice, but we'll see. Hashem was ambivalent about the advice that was given. So this was. You can see from the fact that 40,000 Israelites were killed, Hashem wasn't happy with the Israelites either. Let's just see Rashi here. Vayakumi menu al paimish, harei 25,000 amar lamala. But there was a previous pasuk that said that 25,100. It doesn't say, because previously let's see what pasuk that was. Pasuk Lamed Hey. If you look at pasuk Lamed Hey, it says, "Vayigof Hashem et Binyamin lifnei Yisrael, v'yashkitu v'nei Yisrael b'Binyamin bayom hahu 25,000 u'meya ish, 25,100." So Rashi is asking here, you just detailed for me how the 25,000 were killed. Well, what about this other 100? Lo pirish hecha naflu. Then it says here, Eliyahu gila lebal megala mukos. Eliyahu Navi appeared to the megala mukos, the revealer of secrets. Osana mea halchu v'yashvu b'mdinos Romi v'Ashkenaz. This 100 went to Rome and Germany. By the way, there's another girsa which says they went to Romania. Now, remember, we are talking about the year. Remember, Rome was established 600 BCE, 700 BCE, Remus and Romulus, and then Rome in its height. Rome was a republic until Julius Caesar's 44 BCE. Augustus is 30 BCE, Actium against Cleopatra. So Rome almost doesn't exist. Ashkenaz in Germany, these are Germanic tribes. So I'm not sure exactly. And so we know that from Jewish historians that Titus took 30 to 40,000 Jewish prisoners to Rome, but that's 70 CE. It's 1,000 years after this. And in fact, when Susie and I were in Rome, they told us the Colosseum was built by Jewish captives. If you look at the inscription on top of the Colosseum, it says Judea Capte, separate from the Arch of Titus. The Colosseum part of the Colosseum was constructed by Jewish captives. Many of those Jews wandered up the boot of Italy into Germany. That's how a lot of the Germanic cities like Mainz, Worms, Varmeiza, Speyer, which were along the rivers there, they came up from Rome. But here, they want to say 100 Binyamites, 1,000 years before, ended up in the German and Italy areas. Okay. So Eliyahu Navi, we sing Eliyahu Giladi because there's one shita that Eliyahu is Pinchas, but there's another shita that Eliyahu is from Yamin, who lived in Gilad, in this area. Okay. Pasuk Mem Zayin. Vayifnu vayanu samidbar al sela rimon 600 ish. Now, 600 Binyamites remained and fled to the Sela Rimon. Vayeshvu b'Sela Rimon arba chodashim. They were there for 4 months. V'ish Yisrael shavu b'nei Binyamin vayakum l'fi cherev, because there's still about 400 left. So that's what the Meforshim say. The remaining 400 were killed by Klal Yisrael in various cities. Me'ir mesomad behemad kolon imtzad gam kolim imtzad shelchu ba'esh. They burnt everything down. So this was a very serious civil war where they almost wiped. And says Rashi, v'hanoshim b'chlal mesoma yushim mesoma shon klaya. All the women were killed. No Binyamite women remained. 600 Binyamite males and no women remained. Not one Binyamite woman. So the question is going to be, how is Shevet Binyamin going to repopulate itself?
Question should also be why all the women were eliminated.
Well, this is the part of the Civil War. You want to say, you're talking about spiritually? You mean none of this should have happened at all. This is all bad. The Pelegish, we're going to see in a minute. Why did 40,000 Israelites get killed? So we're going to learn some midrashim on that. So, but I'd like to finish. I'd like to read the pshat of where we're going, and then we'll go back today. Is the format I'd like to do today, just so we understand the narrative, and then we'll answer some of the questions that Bernie posed and what we've posed. The Ish Yisrael nishba b'mitzpah lemor. After all of this occurs, Klal Yisrael takes an oath. Ish mimenu lo yitain bito levinyamin liisha. None of us are going to give our women, our daughters, to any Binyamites for a wife. Vayavoam Beitel, Vayeshvu Sham Ad Ha'arev, and the Meforshim again say Beitel, he refers to Shiloh, the house of God, where the Mishkan was. Vayisu Kolam Vayivku B'chi Gadol. They cried out greatly. So, just so we know, Masechta Tainis Dav Lamed, Ish Yisrael, when they took Rav Nachman B'tu B'av, Hutru Shevet Binyamin Lovo B'kal. One of the reasons we celebrate the holiday of Tu B'av, right, 15th of Av. If you went to Camp Hoshava, those of you who went to camps on the East Coast, I don't know what the minigs were there, but we had a minig called Sadie Hawkins Day, Tu B'av, and the girls would go chasing the boys. That's Tu B'av, but we'll see exactly what Tu B'av was. Here, it does have to do with yichus, with marriage, because Tu B'av is when this oath was reversed. But the oath was taken Tu B'av as well. Shneimar, Ish Yisrael nishba b'mitzpah lemor, Ish mimenu lo yiten bitol v'min lisha, my darish amarav mimenu v'lo mibanenu. When the pasuk says Ish mimenu, that means from us, but our children will be able to marry their wives off to them. That's how they adjusted it. By the way, you should know, Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, this is in the end of Masechta Tainis. Lo hayu yamim tovim liYisrael kachamisha asar ba'av u'v'yom HaKippurim. The two biggest yamim tovim of the year. Would you have chosen those two? Tu B'av and Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Yom
Make
Kippur.
it shorter.
What was that? Bishlam Yom Kippur mishum di ispe slicho mechila. That Klal Yisrael gets its atonement, and Yom Shenit B'Luchos Achronos. Ela Tu B'av Maihi. What's so special about Tu B'av? On Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman Yom Shehuter Shevet Binyamin Lavo B'Kal. It was when this oath was relaxed, and now Jewish people could marry everybody. Shneimar v'ish Yisrael nishba b'mitzpah lemor. Mimenu v'lo mibanenu she'ein hashvua banenu. It reminds me, those of you who've seen The Godfather, right? Vito Corleone, he had taken an oath. He's not going to take revenge for the fact that his son was killed. But his son, Michael Corleone, could take revenge. It's the author there used the same chazal, basically. So, Pasuk Beis, Vayavoam Beitel v'yeshvu sham ad ha'arev l'fnei Elokim, vayisu kolam vayivku b'chi gadol. They cried. Vayomru lama Hashem Elokei Yisrael hayta zot b'Yisrael lipaked hayom Yisrael shevet echad. Why, Hashem, are you causing that one shevet disappeared? Well, that's pretty chutzpahdik, that they're blaming Hashem. And the Midrashim take hold of that. The Medrashim Koheles says, "Kas harbei she'machisim laKadosh Baruch Hu b'masem mareim." That all of this anger at Kadosh Baruch Hu. in fact, that they made such a statement. I'm going to read the Musar Nevi'im. The fact that they said this nira, like they're upset with God. The Jewish people thought in their eyes that it was Hashem that caused this. Let's say Hashem basically is the one who told them, yes, go and fight them. It was done for no reason. Like it says in Mishlei, Avlat Adam Tisalef Darko, the evil of a person causes him to go in a crooked way. They acted improperly. Like it says in Rambam, like I read it late, Kishitzorim al-Ir, when they conquer a city, this is in Hilchos Malachim of the Rambam, Ein makifin otama arbaruchatea. The Jewish people, when they're conquering a non-Jewish town, you don't surround it on four sides. You leave a place for them to escape. It says in the Milchemes Midyan, when they fought Midyan, the Midyanim, they were the ones that Bilam convinced to go out with their daughters to entice the Jewish people through znus. Yet they allowed even the Midianites to escape. Mikol shekain shetzrichen hayu laniach bnei Binyamin to escape. Shayu me'acheihem makom limaleit. Avalhem lo asu kein. They did not give them a chance to escape. Like we learned the pasuk tonight, kitru et Binyamin, like a crown. A crown's completely closed. And then those who escaped to the Midbar were also killed. And therefore they were responsible by themselves that the Shevet almost got destroyed. And they had no reason to blame Hashem. A lot going on here. Bnei Israel are doing tshuva. They're bringing korbanos. They built it either, the Radak says, either the Beit El where Yaakov Avinu built the Mizbeach, or it's in Shiloh. And they're trying to do tshuva for all of this. And they're regretting what they did. Vayomru bnei Yisrael mi asher lo alat. Now they're not through with the evil acts. Mi asher lo alat bakal mikol shiftei Yisrael Hashem. Remember, 400,000 Jewish people came to this army. They had called out everyone else to come. Then they asked, who didn't come? Ki hashvu hagdola hayta asher lo alat Hashem hamitzvah lemor mot yumat. We all took an oath. Whoever did not come up to the mitzvah to come and fight will be killed. And Vainachamu bnei Israel el Binyamin achiv, the bnei Israel are having regret about their brother Binyamin. Vayomru nigda yom shevet echad miYisrael, that they almost are wiping out the whole shevet. Ma na'aseh lahem lanotarim l'nashim. There's 600 Binyamin men remaining. What are we going to do for wives for them? V'anachnu nishbanu b'Hashem l'titet lam ibnosei l'nashim. We've taken an oath that we can't give our daughters to them for wives. Vayomru mi echad mishiftei Yisrael asher lo alal Hashem hamitzvah. Who is it that did not come up to fight with us? V'hinei, they took a census. Lo ba'ish el hamachanem Yavesh Gilad elakal. The place Yavesh Gilad, they did not come to do battle. Vayitpakei ha'am. And they checked. Did
you bring the wax thing?
Yavesh Gilad. They found nobody from Yavesh Gilad had come to the army. 12,000 soldiers are immediately detached to Yavesh Gilad. Vayitzavu otam lemor. L'chu v'kitem et yoshvei Yavesh Gilad l'fi charev v'hanashim v'hataf. Destroy the men the women, the children in Yavesh Gilad. V'zeh davar asher tasu. Kol zachar, v'chol isha yodat mishkav zachar tacharimu. Any woman who's already had relations with a man, those were the women that were killed. Vayimtzum yoshvei Yavesh Gilad, arba me'ot na'ara betulah. 400 women who were betulah. They had no relations. Asher lo yada ish limishkav zachar. Vayaviu otam el machaneh Shiloh asher be'eretz Canaan. By the way, the Gemara asks, how did they know that they were besulos? Do any of the Daf Yomi guys remember this Gemara? How did they check if somebody was a besula or not? They would take a barrel of wine that was sealed, and you could smell the wine. And if you would put a basula on top of the wine, top of the barrel, versus a non-basula, the Gemara says the odor was different. You could smell the wine more if a basula sat on it than not, or vice versa. But that was the test. The Gemara says that. Because they didn't do a physical examination. They didn't send them to a GYN to figure out who's a basula, who's not a basula. So they used that test. But can you imagine what's going on here? Pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayishlechu kol ha'edah, vayidabru al bnei Binyamin asher b'seli Rimon, vayikru lam shalom. There's 600 Binyamites that are hanging out in Sela Rimon. And they come like a peace group to reconcile with Shevet Binyamin. Vayashav Binyamin vayitahi vayitnu lahem anashim asher chiyu. These 400 Besulot are given as wives of Yavesh Gilad, are given as wives to 400 of the Binyamite men. The Lo Matzu Lahem came. Of course, there's 200 Binyamites who don't have a wife yet. But 400 have wives. By the way, these wives are getting a good catch. Why are they getting a good catch? Because you had 26,000 Binyamites who owned the Nachla of Shevet Binyamin. But now the owners of the Shevet are 600. So immediately these people became super wealthy, because wealth at that time was calculated by how much land you had. That, by the way, that existed until about 1850. You know, the Industrial Revolution changed that. In England, the aristocrats, you know, they were an aristocrat because they had big estates and they had land and people worked for them. But once the Industrial Revolution changed, and
What?
That's
Oh,
a
yes,
feudal
it didn't sound
system.
today.
yeah, the feudal, but Mario, the feudal system carried on mamish until 1850. And by the way, a lot of Jewish families in England were the ones who changed it because they became industrial, and that's why there was a lot of friction between, you know, the landowners and the landholders and the nouveau riche, the industrialists, many of them who were Jews in England, about that. Anyways. The Am is now in full regret what they did. What shall we do for these 200 Binyamites who don't have wives? So first, Nachlat Hashevet Nishara Rekanit, Havu Eitza Shelidu Banim Vechzik B'Nachlatam Al Peitan Nisheret. So one rule they made at this time is that a bas would not be yoresh with the brothers. Says the Gemara in Baba Kama, Vayomru Yerushat Pleital Binyamin V'loy Macha Shevet Yisrael. Amrav Yitzchak Bered Ravami. Melamed Sheet Nuim Shevet Binyamin Shalot Tirash Bas Haben Ima Achim. That the daughter of, let's say, one of the brothers died, he would not normally, the boss would stand in the place of the brother. But then the boss gets married to a different shevet, and then the land of Binyamin would go to a different shevet. So at this time, they made a t'nai that the boss would not inherit. They changed the inheritance rules for the purpose of to maintain the land of Shevet Binyamin at that time. Right. Again, they raised the problem that we took a shavua. This is before the Tu B'Av, where they changed that. Up until the Tu B'Av in the future, where they got rid of that decree. Right now, they're still operating under the decree that they can't marry their daughters to the remaining Binyamin.
Can a girl after Bogus, after she gets independent, does she have to follow the shvua that her father's made? Can she herself go and marry the Shevet Binyamin? Is she obligated
She
to
can go
keep?
marry, but she didn't inherit a piece of the land with the brothers.
I understand, but let's say all the Shvatim made a gzeira that the shvua that they would not marry into Binyamin. But can a girl who is after her own, but on a free will, go out and marry from some of the, let's say these two among these 200?
But you eventually, Elazar, eventually they got rid of the gzeira and they could marry the Binyamites.
I know, but why would even be a problem right away to who they get? If a girl is over 12 years old, it doesn't apply to her. Besides, like you say, she's going to get even more from her husband. They're going to be very rich.
This t'nai was made now that she was not Yoirish. So if she marries to somebody from Shevet Naphtali, the guy from Shevet Naphtali is not going to get any land. That was the point, so that they wouldn't dilute the land of Shevet Binyamin.
I understand, but we're talking right now about the 200 men that had no women to marry.
So the question is, the Jewish people are not giving their daughters as wives. So how are they going to get married, these 200 men?
So if a girl gets 12 years old, over 12, she doesn't have to live to her parents anymore. She can
12
get
and a half. First
12
of all,
and a half, right. Right, 12 and a half. So she doesn't have to listen
to her. Lemaisa, that's not how it happened. We know that it was still done. The girls stayed under the protection of the father until they got married, even after Bogeres.
All right, yeah.
I mean, that's the way it was practical. They didn't marry out of love and make a wedding on their own. It just didn't happen. It didn't happen until 50 years ago. Forget about. I mean, remember the 60s. We got. I mean, even among non-Hasidic people, it just marriages were still made. Who you knew, they fixed it up. It's the way it was until 100 years ago.
Does this relate in any way to Benos Slavchad? Yeah,
the Benos Slavchad have the same. It's a different sugya, but it's similar in terms of what happened over there.
Right.
There, they actually made it t'nai. One of the reasons why the Tu B'Av is they got rid of that as well. Whatever they did to the Benos Slavchad, because there they also made a certain t'nai that you shouldn't marry. Those daughters, because of that, also could not marry between the Shvatim. That was before the Pilegesh Bagiva. That was the times of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
But that was also gotten rid of. That's also one of the things that happened on Tu B'Av. At some point in history, it's not clear when.
Why were the women of Binyamin killed and the children?
So why did we have a civil war? Because the cruelty that was done by the Giva, and by the way, so the Jewish people were going to learn a medrash, not a medrash. The Musar should have been, the Bnei Yisrael should have met with the leaders of Binyamin. And the leaders of Binyamin should have taken care of whatever criminals were in Giva, and that there wouldn't have been a civil war. Once civil war, then they wiped everybody out, men, women, and children.
Was there any, was it particular that they did this to Binyamin for, it just happened to be named Binyamin, or was there something, a bigger picture as far as, doing this to Binyamin?
Well, we're going to learn in Medrash a little bit about Menashe and Ephraim versus Yosef and Bilam. There was a Havamina that Binyamin was going to be gotten rid of, and Menashe and Ephraim are going to take their place. That's why you have 12. But we're going to learn in Medrash a little bit like maybe what Ellen is saying. But in general, it started because the city of Giva was in the city of was one of the Binyamite cities, and they felt that whatever happened in Giva happened because the neighborhood is a bad neighborhood, and so whatever's going on in Shevet Binyamin must not be good. So there's a medrash I'm not sure we'll have time to learn it, about whoever sees a sota bikilkula, whoever sees a sota in the Beis Hamikdash go through that process should make himself a nazir. So why should he make himself a nazir? Because if he was in a neighborhood where there was adultery or maybe adultery taking place, he's also not good. That means whatever sviva you're in causes evil things to happen. So what happened in Giva reflected on the whole Shevet, in a sense. That's one of the approaches that the Meforshim take to answer one of these things that are bothering Ellen regarding.
Was it primarily Avodah Zarah, the Shevet Binyamin? But they were not if it was, they were not the only Shevet.
It was not Avodah Zarah. The Giva part, remember, it was like stone. They didn't give hospitality. They wanted to rape the guy. They ended up raping the woman. It was nus. It was not idolatry. Idolatry, we had Pesel Micha. And again, we're going to summarize tonight. It all comes down to the fact that there's no Melech B'Yisrael. And it's all Hefker. And there's no leadership. There's no central leadership who's going to be an executive. And we'll conclude tonight with some direction, I think. Pasuk Yutes. And this is important pasuk. Vayomru, Hinei Chag Hashem b'Shilo miyamim yamima. There's a holiday in Shiloh from time to time. Asher mitzvona lebeit El mizrach hashemesh limsila ha'olah mi beit El Shechemo minegel ulvona. It tells us where it is. The Radak here says like this: what is this Chag? What is this Chag miyamim yamima? Efshar, says the Radak, ki mi Pesach lePesach hayazeh, o mi Sukkot leSukkot shayazman simcha. We're going to see what happened here. They did shiduchim here, and then o b'yom HaKippurim shahayu bnos Yisrael yotzos v'cholos b'kromim ki divrei Rabboseinu v'machol hazeh shayel v'not Yisrael hayachutz l'Shilo. That Tu B'Av wasn't the only time of Shidduch, but even Yom Kippur. B'nos Yisrael would go out in the vineyards and dance, wearing white, and they would borrow. There's old Gemara Masechta Tainus like that. And the Radak says it was Yom Kippur. I wrote an article on this in the HaMizrachi magazine 6 months ago when I talked about Tu B'Av and Yom Kippurim. Why do they say that the two biggest holidays were Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur? What does one have to do with the other? So this Radak I quoted because this is the only place where there's some concept of Shiduchim on Yom Kippurim. It's a Radak on this pasuk. So, and what does this have to do with anything? Because they said, Vayitzavu et bnei Binyamin lemor, l'chu v'araftem b'kramim. Go hang out in those vineyards where the girls are going to go dance, uri'item, and you're going to see, v'neim yetzu pnot Shilo l'chul b'mcholot, the girls of Shiloh are going to come out and dance, v'yitzatem in akramim v'chataftem lachem, you're going to grab, ish ishto mibnot Shiloh, v'alachtem Eretz Binyamin, you're going to take them to Eretz Binyamin. So the 200 Binyamites are going to find their wives in this place. Vayaki avo avotam, their fathers will come, or acheim lariv eleinu. They're going to have a problem with us. V'amarnu aleim chanunu otanu. We told them to go. Ki lo lakachnu ish ishto b'milchama. It's not like we grabbed them in war. The only ones we could get in war were the 400 from Yavesh Gilad. And we can't give any others because we took a shvua. And you didn't give your daughters. So, Vayasuchein b'nei Binyamin, Vayisu nashim lemisparam. The 200 found their wives. Minam cholot asher gazalu. From these circles that they grabbed girls that they saw there. Vayalchu vayashuv nachlatam. They went back to Shevet Binyamin. Vayivnu et harim vayashvuvam. So Shevet Binyamin reconstituted itself from 1,000 Binyamites. From 600. 400 that got their wives from Yavesh Gilad, and 200 from these Nashim. By the way, who do you think is going to be descended from these 600? Which connects, this is the last couple of psukim in Shevet Shoftim with the beginning of Sefer Shmuel. The
Shaul,
Shaul HaMelech is from what Shevet?
Binyamin. Ish.
Binyamin. So these are the only Binyamites left.
Wow.
We'll talk about this in a minute. Each person goes back to his fig tree, right? Tachas te'inaso, vayetzu misham ish l'nachlato. And look at what pasuk ends our Sefer Shoftim. Vayamim hahem ein melech b'Yisrael, ish hayashar beinav yaseh. How many times have we seen that same pasuk?
Yeah.
And the Mari Kra says, that's the secret to all of this. Don't wonder, Al titam al Shimshon, shiniach kol bnos amov avisha b'nachal sorek, that he left all of the Jewish girls and he ran after Delilah. And eventually the police team took his eyes out. And don't be surprised the mother of Micha, who took 200 silver and made a pesel. And Micha, who made a Bayis Avodah Zarah. And found a Levi to be a priest to the Avodah Zarah. And that Shevet Dan took him and set up Pesel Micha. And don't be surprised about the criminals in the city of Giva from Shevet Binyamin that raped the Plilegesh and killed her. Why? Shabiamim hahem melech b'Yisrael sheyaser otam v'yorem tech derech hatova v'yishara. Chasal Sefer Shoftim.
Ernie, can I ask you a question?
Please.
I just find the word that the 200 Binyamin men. It's the pasuk says Asher Gazalu. They abducted them. That sounds like it's against their will. It's not that they were dancing and making themselves attractive, but
They grabbed them, chapt, right? Because
Gazalu. Let's look at the word Gzela. I mean, it's pretty
also
hard.
the word Bernie. What does chatifa mean? So the Medrash Tanchuma says, what is the bracha that Yaakov gives to Binyamin? Binyamin ze'ev yitraf.
Yes.
Binyamin is a wolf who's toireif, from the word treifa. He tears. Ma ze'ev choteif, a wolf grabs. Kain shifto shel Binyamin choteif. So remember, the blessing of Yaakov is a nevuah. He's predicting the V'yitzatem min akramim v'chataftem. Harei kashem shaze'ev choteif kach Binyamin. That's from a Medrash Tanchuma.
I guess they
Maybe
weren't
you
that,
listening?
that I guess they weren't that showman the gear in those days.
Let's remind
They're
people.
savages.
The Avia drove.
What?
Be careful, Bernie. There's a Zabe, but there's a bear here too.
The Mikra Kodesh says that this pasuk of Bayamim Ahem Ein Melech B'Yisrael is lignus for Klal Yisrael. Because initially it says, the pasuk right before says, Vaytalchu b'nei Yisrael ba'et hahi ish l'shivto l'mishpachto. Hagam shaya lahem az lasum lev ala mechshala sheyatzat miyadam. Look at what they just went through, a civil war where they almost destroyed a shevet. They should have closed off the fences that were open here. And they should have realized we need to put a melech on top of us, or a shofet. However, immediately after it says that the people went back to their place, everything stays the same. Nishar davar kemikedem shein melech Yisrael v'shechol ish yaseh hayashar be'einav. I'd like to read from Rabbi Hatton a few concluding statements. As the book of Shoftm opened, each tribe labored mightily to secure its own allotment of land. There was no national leader of Yeshua's stature to unify and to inspire. And the tribes of Israel have yet to forge a national identity. In tribal societies, one's identity is drawn from the family and the clan. Therefore, one's highest loyalty in a tribal society is to one's own. After Yeshua's wars against the Canaanite armies are over, there is little to hold the tribes of Israel together. As a result, tribalism rules the day in the book of Judges, with narrow sectarian interests always prevailing over broader national goals. It's a rare moment in the Sefer Shoftm when tribes cooperate with each other. We saw it. In Shiras Dvorah, a number of Shvatim came together. In Yiftach, a few Shvatim came together. But never do they come together as one unified people. And the final narratives in the book provide us with a sobering conclusion. There are no specific judges in these final accounts, only unruly criminals operating within a landscape in which these tribal loyalties run wild. Every moral failure and every socio-political dysfunction are amplified tenfold in the final chapters. Finally, not a moment too soon, Sefer Shoftm gasps to an agonizing close with a harsh indictment of its very name. Judges cannot save, and deliverance must therefore be sought by another form of government. So leaving the book behind, chastened by its sobering stories, cautioned by its solemn message, we anticipate better days. And let me end by showing that. There is a ray of hope in this last statement of there is no king in Israel. It says in those days there was no king in Israel. It implies that one day a king will arise to provide the leadership that the people so sorely need. When that king rules, a man will no longer do what is fit in his own eyes. He will be bound to the righteous laws of the king and be held liable for his actions. The story of that king is told in the book of Shmuel, which follows next week on the heels of Sefer Shoftm. It takes some time for the era of the judges to finally exhaust itself. There's going to be Eli Kohen, there's going to be the departure of Shmuel Hanavi, who is also the last Shofet. But when that ends, Shaul ben Kish is crowned the first king of Israel. Now, who does Melech Shaul hail from? From the tribe of Binyamin. Where does Shaul come from? From Giva. In fact, he's called upon the people of Yavesh Gilad are going to be attacked by Nachash of Ammon. And King Saul, in one of his first actions, rallies troops to help fight Yavesh Gilad. And 300,000 people respond. So it just shows you that whatever happened now in Pileg Rishakal Giva, Shaul from Binyamin, who's from Giva, is going to reverse everything. He's going to save the people of Yavesh Gilad, the same people who were massacred by the Israelites to provide women for the surviving Binyamites. It's a mirror effect. It's now a Benjamite who saves the day. And Yavesh Gilad is rescued from harm. And a brighter future begins to emerge out of this dynamic. So it's also shows what great literature. I think Rabbi Hatton, the more modern approach to the study of Tanakh, I think even Bernie and Temi's son-in-law, who is a professor of Bible and Tanakh, they look at Tanakh in all sorts of ways today, in ways that weren't looked at in the past. As a literary, how it looks in literature, etc., the peaks, the dramas, etc. Well, look at this reversal, how we ended, and how eventually things are going to correct itself in Sefer Shmuel. But I think we've now been through Sefer Yoshua and Sefer Shoftm as a group, learned it in a certain way. I think we've come out chastened, but also more informed about a lot of things that have happened in our past that maybe we didn't learn as thoroughly as we did, when we learned it a long time ago in school. Any other comments? Questions?
No, just to give you guys a gross shikoyach for giving this year. That's number one.
Johnny, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hashem, we will start Sefer Shmuel next week, and maybe we'll start with a little siyum before we start learning.
Sounds
Sounds good.
How many more days of downhill skiing?
No, we're coming